Okay, we are going to now take a look at the basic idea of how to play Clash Royale so we can have a better understanding of what we're doing in our stats class. The game basically is this. It is a game where you are competing one-on-one, for the most part, against an opponent. You're on the bottom of the screen, they are on the top of the screen. You generate something over time called Elixir, and Elixir is used to play different cards, and different cards have different Elixir costs. The more powerful cards have a larger elixir cost. The weaker cards have a smaller elixir cost. Basically, the person who wins is the one who destroys the most towers from the other person. So if you look, you have 3 towers, you have 2 queen towers and a king, they have 2 towers and a king, and it's just a matter of trying to beat them by killing their towers before they kill yours. It is a 3-minute game. Overall, we have a type of card called a common card. Common cards are the basic cards. They're the weakest in terms of strength, or rarity as we call them. They are gray and they can be good, but for the most part, common cards are like entry-level cards. Rare cards are the next level that increase in power. Rare cards, as you can see, they're orange. And these cards have a little bit more power to them. Maybe they cost cheap for the power that they do, or maybe they have something that is special about them that grants them up. Epic cards are the next level of rarity. These cards are purple. Epic cards tend to be stronger. You can see this particular card, the Golem, has a casting cost of 8 elixir, and it can go ahead and it can do some serious damage if it gets to a tower. Lastly, we have, or not lastly, legendary cards. Legendary cards are super powerful cards. You can see they're light blue with a rainbow color on them. Legendary cards increase in strength, and they're the second most powerful cards in the game, basically. Then you have champion cards, and champion cards are a collection of 5 cards that are in the game, and these champions do have like special, unique abilities that basically make them the most powerful cards in the game when used correctly. Overall, there are 3 types of cards. One is called troop cards. Troop cards are basically your lifeblood of the game. You can see from left to right, we have a common, we have a rare, we have an epic. These are the cards that you cast and they run to the other people's towers or beat up the other guy's troops as they fight. Spell cards are things that you use and they just basically are like instantaneous things. They just sort of happen. Right here, we're going to see a spell card get thrown and then an arrow is going to get shot. Those things don't stay around, they just happen, and then they're basically done. Last type we have card there is, it's called a building card. And a building card is exactly what you think it would be. A building card is a card that you play, and it basically puts a building on the board that can do different things that we'll take a look at in a little bit. So now let's take a look at what you need to do to build a deck. So now we're going to build a deck. When you're building a deck, one of the things you need to do is you need to take into account the different types of cards that you want. You want a combination of tanks, you want a combination of ranged, air units, spells, different kind of things when you make your deck. And you also have to take into account something called average elixir cost. So you don't want a deck that costs way too much and is really slow, or way too fast and it's really weak. So as you can see here, I've got 2 decks. In the bottom left corner, you see that the left deck costs 3.6 elixir on average, and the right one costs 3.8 elixir, and it's a combination of cards. These 2 decks, I have one that's 4.3 and another that's 4.0 elixir. That basically means that I'm spending about 4 elixir every time I play a card, so I need to plan for how I'm going to do that. Now we're going to talk about different cards. We're going to talk about troop cards. These are the cards you spend elixir to bring a guy out onto the battlefield for you. The first type of troop is a tank troop. These are slow and steady guys that can take a lot of damage. This is a Golem. It costs 8 elixir, and it slowly walks towards the towers to try to beat up the tower and can protect your smaller guys. This type of guy is a P.E.K.K.A. It takes a lot of damage, but unlike the Golem, it also swings and does a lot of damage as well. Next, we have something called ranged troops. Ranged troops are something that just basically sit back at a distance and then shoot things at the other troops from the other team. You also have something like this with the ranged troop that can actually fly. So this one's up in the air and it's shooting from up in the air at the opponent. Next type of troop you have is going to call a melee or close range troop. These are guys that stand right next to someone and beat them up. This is a cheap little thing called the skeletons. Here you have a flying version. These are bats that have to get close and then they basically pick at the troop when you see them. Next, you can see something here. We are barbarians, and you can see that this casts 5 barbarians when you play the elixir cost, and it turns around and it beats up a tank. And then the next one you can see right here, you can see we have a Valkyrie, and the Valkyrie is one that turns around as it moves, and it just basically spins in a circle, and it can do damage to the troops when you get there. Another type of melee you have is something that's like pretty fast. This is a mini P.E.K.K.A. You can see it can take a little bit of damage and do a lot of damage, but it's also pretty weak if it could get ganged up on. So there's a collection of different melee cards that you can use and different troop cards that you can use that basically you have to combine together and figure out how to do correctly in a good balance to win the game. Alright, now we're going to talk about spell cards. Spell cards are things that you pay the elixir, you play the card, and it has basically an instantaneous effect. What that means is, like, for example, this one's arrows. You cast a card or you play the card for 3 elixir, and you'll choose a collection of arrows that just can wipe out low-level troops or weaken stronger troops. Then here you can see we have a giant snowball or a rocket. Basically, these are cards that you play and something just manifests itself, it creates itself out of thin air, and then does some damage somewhere else on the playing field. The last type of card we're going to talk about are building cards, and they're pretty obvious. Building cards are buildings you place in the playing area. Sometimes the buildings will be offensive, sometimes they'll be defensive, sometimes they'll be both. You can see the cannon costs 3, the mortar costs 4, and they both do different things. One shoots and one launches things in the air. You can also have types of building like the barbarian hut that actually spawn or create guys that come out of it that turn around and can do damage during the match. Okay, so to wrap things up, I got this match going on at double speed here. But basically, you get 4 cards in the bottom. Those are the cards in your hand, and you have to play those cards, spending the elixir cost for them to play. The elixir cost basically can range anywhere from 1 elixir to 9 elixir, and you play the cards in whatever order you wish, basically reacting to your opponent and what they're doing. You have your collection of common, rare, epic, legendary, and champion. And you also have your combination of spells, troops, and buildings. And you can see I've got a collection of different things I'm doing here. As you go through, your goal is to basically go through and do damage to the opponent's towers. And if you destroy more towers of theirs than they destroy of yours, you win the game. It's a matter of combinations of different things, from tanks and range DPS and melee DPS. You just have to get a combination of things that correctly works the game. What we're going to be doing in this class is we're just going to be studying the different categories that we have here. We don't have to worry about playing the game or being good at the game. We just have to worry about basically understanding how our cards classified, how the cards are utilized, and how the data itself is collected or organized to be able to make the game work. So what we will basically be doing is we'll be looking at cards like this. We will be looking at the cards and the type of card. Is it a troop? Is it a building? Is it a spell? We'll be looking at its rarity. Is it common? Is it rare? Is it epic? We'll be studying things about its damage. We'll be studying things about its hit points, its damage per second. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to be dividing the cards up into different categories and then making studies of those different categories. So we might turn around and say, hey, let's do a study of all troop cards and break up the troop cards by rarity. And then we're going to compare the damage of commons versus the damage of epics and then see how it goes from there. Or we're going to make predictions based on elixir cost. So we're going to sit down and say, I believe the average troop elixir cost is 3.2 or higher. So we're going to basically be studying what you see here, and we're going to be doing it in such a way that we're going to just basically be trying to sit down and use the data as a common data set for the entire semester to sit down and make comparisons and just understand more about the numbers that are behind the game. That's what we're doing. Hopefully this explains everything for the class, and from there we'll be able to turn around and use the information from week to week to the best of our ability to understand what it is we're doing.